Hi there, my name is Lyndon Smith, and I'd like to welcome you to the Business Growth Factor. This is a podcast on conversations about building better businesses. I'm joined by our co-host, Joshua Lyyenhorst, and like I said, we're here to discuss how to build better businesses. A little bit of background about myself. I originally from South Africa, so you may or may not recognize the accent, or you may be like, where the hell does that come from? My wife and I arrived here about 2.5 years ago, and I've got a company called Expansive Edge. We work with small to medium-sized businesses, typically in the trades, and we support them in documenting their business processes and empowering their people to be successful and have the information they need to get things done. I'm going to hand over to Josh and let him introduce himself, and then we'll get into our first episode of the Business Growth Factor.
Awesome. Thanks, Lyndon. So just a quick question. When you said you came here, where is here from South Africa?
Oh, my apologies. Yeah. So we're obviously in Canada. I say obviously, but we stay in a little town called Cochrane, about 35 minutes west of Calgary, and also about 30 minutes from the Rocky Mountains, 20 or 30 minutes from the Rocky Mountains. And we originally stayed in Vancouver for 2 years. In that time, my wife and I had twins. We were blessed with 2 beautiful babies. And we realized it takes a village to raise a child, and we've got 2. So we decided to move closer to where the family is in Canada, and that brought us across to Alberta. So here we are in Cochrane.
Very awesome.
Yeah.
So 2 baby twins. So if ever you're on here and you've got bags under your eyes, we know what's going on.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's hope those days are done.
Yeah, right. Okay, little intro here. So I'm Josh Leyenhorst, and I'm an accounting and finance professional. So a chartered professional accountant and certified exit planning advisor. And a little background. Also live in Canada, live in Dawson Creek. That's where our family lives. So we found a little piece of paradise out this way. Business is primarily based in British Columbia and Alberta. And so I find myself usually in the lower mainland, just outside of Vancouver, for business purposes. Background. Actually have a background in biochemistry. So worked in pharmaceutical research and development for a few years. And so naturally I became an accountant because that's what happens. So I found that I really enjoyed business, and I took a very scientific approach to doing business. And as I was doing that, I was like, I think this might actually be accounting. I think I'm using numbers to make decisions in business. And I think that's accounting, which when I was going to university, I was never interested in accounting because to me, in my mind, it was sitting in front of your keyboard, just going tap, 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 data entry. And I was like, that's not me. But I realized there's this whole realm of accounting and finance. It's really interesting. And it's the whole idea that you can understand the DNA of business, and the numbers tell a story. And so accounting and finance is the ability to learn what that story is and then help map out the next chapters to get a business to where they want to go. So that's what I do. So firm that I have is Base Point CPA, and we basically provide accounting and finance solutions, primarily focused on virtual CFO services. So kind of helping companies understand the story of their business from a numbers perspective and how to get to where they want to go. And also enjoy working with the trades. So there's some good overlap there between Lyndon and myself, I suppose. Could you say that we discuss trade secrets, or would that just be a bad joke?
It's a good dad joke. I like that.
All right. I'll try to keep those to a minimum.
I'll start working on mine. Yeah. So that kind of leads us into the next part of the this introduction episode. So maybe I could just give some advice, or not advice, some insights as to like how we got onto starting this podcast. So Josh and I met, maybe about 2 years ago.
Yeah, about 3 years ago. Yeah.
And we connected, and we reconnected again, and we decided we were going to start writing a book together. And the book was all around empowering businesses to be successful, and giving them like a bit of a guideline or some tools on certain components of the business. So taking a look at like marketing, sales, leadership, finance, like all the different components that make up a business. And so we started putting that together. We developed the framework for that. And we thought about like how can we market that, and we kind of we had this good structure in place, and we thought it'd be really good to have a conversation around this, get some feedback, and bring that feedback into our book. Because whilst we may be subject matter experts in what we're doing and what we're writing about, we also we're going to be inviting feedback from our audience and people that are listening to these podcasts. So by no means, I mean, I welcome you to sort of challenge our opinion, share your opinion, and that's really what this is about: conversations around building better businesses. So our insights are really purely based on our experience and our perspectives that that we're bringing to the table. So, Josh, I'm going to just hand back over to you. Just kind of run us through what our introductory episode is going to be all about.
Sure. Yeah. So, as we were talking about what we should be talking about with our podcast here as we get this thing started was, a good place to start is helping businesses drive their revenue, right? Because obviously, if we're not working to drive our revenue, it's kind of more of a hobby, and we're here to actually have good businesses. So we want to talk about how to drive revenue. And so what I've seen over the years with a lot of different businesses is there will be like budget targets where they'll say, hey, we want to see revenue growth of say 10% year over year. And those are good targets, nothing wrong with targets like that. But what it leaves out of the picture is, okay, so that's the target. What will you be doing today or tomorrow or the next month or the next quarter to actually move the needle on that? And so what we'll be talking about today is just specific drivers that impact revenue growth.
Yeah, excellent. So, I mean, just to kind of echo what you're saying there, or to add to it, really, is you may have these quarterly objectives or these goals, that ambitions that your company has. We're going to push revenue by 10%, but it's around creating an action plan to achieve those lofty, not necessarily lofty goals, but those goals, like having a structured plan on how to actually get the results that we're looking for.
Yeah.
And I think being able to drive that through to the rest of the team, being clear on what the what the key results are, KPIs, and we'll get into those details further down the line. This is kind of just an introductory session so that we can kind of add some value and get you guys excited about what's coming up. So, Josh,
sure. Can I just quickly jump in, Lyndon? So just a comment on KPIs. So just a term that we will be talking about in future episodes for sure. Key performance indicator being what that is. Another way I've heard them defined is key predictive indicators. And so now it's totally changing the term around. So it's making it a different term. But what it does is it makes you think about the predictive indicators for what it is that you're striving to do. And so that's really what we're going to be diving into today is what are the predictive indicators tied to revenue growth? What are the things that you can do that you can start tracking and be like, are we working on this? Is this moving forward? Because if it is, it should be driving up revenue.
Yeah, great catch there, Josh. And I think when you're talking about predictive indicators, you also want to it's measuring, so taking the results to be able to predict what what the future looks like. So let's dive into it. I know you've got a framework that you leverage with. Is it 6 revenue drivers?
Yeah, 6 of them. Yeah. So the framework is kind of taking what I've seen from some different places. So you've probably seen something like this in different contexts, but just real briefly to summarize what they are, 6 key drivers to drive your revenue specifically. So you're looking at leads, looking at conversion rate, retention rate, referral rate, your average dollar per sale, and then your average number of transactions per customer. So 6 very specific things that drive your revenue, and we'll kind of look at how they interrelate with each other in a moment here.
Okay, super. So let's dig into the first part of that, lead generation. So how do you measure lead generation, and why is that important? Why is that first? Does it necessarily have to be first up on that list?
Yeah, so that's actually a good question, Lyndon. I gave that list in no particular order. So really more what it is, and I've got the just the equation written down here just to kind of go through. But if you think of revenue, again, it's like typically the top line. like you've probably heard the term top line revenue, right? So it's usually the top line of your income statement. And we'll be talking about financial statements and stuff in other podcasts, but it basically your revenue is going to be a function of the number of customers that you have, the average dollar per sale from each customer, and then the average number of transactions that each customer has. So those three things kind of are what will primarily drive your revenue. But then your number of customers is going to be impacted by things like the number of leads that you have, what your conversion rate is, what your retention rate is, and what your referral rate is. So those things all feed into your number of customers. So yeah, we can start diving into leads, just because that would be sort of your number of customers component there. So again, leads are basically, and they'll be defined differently depending on who you speak with about this, but they're like prospective customers, right? Prospective clients. So, how warm they are, like that's a totally different discussion. When I talk about how warm they are, how more familiar they are with your product or your brand, it is something you try to move people along to get them closer to the point of sale. But you're essentially thinking about people who have not yet purchased from you, but are entering into some kind of relationship with you. How do you get them to enter into that relationship, but before they buy?
They're interested in something that you like, your services or products that you have. So you've done something to create awareness, and they have engaged with you in some way, either via email, phone call, web forms, whatever that looks like, and now you've got that potential lead, right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of like when we talk about lead generation activities, there's a bunch of things that come to mind, and I mean, your website is one of them. Social media, networking, just going to different types of networking events where you're connecting with that ICP, your ideal client profile, and just being clear on what your unique value proposition is in a broader sense of things, so that when you're generating those leads, you're actually pulling in a good quality leads, because you can get an influx of like hundreds, thousands, depends on what your business looks like, but you could get massive increase in leads, but they're poor quality leads, and you still have to service those leads, and it consumes your time. So what you really want to be doing is measuring the quality of your leads, and bringing good quality leads into your business through those lead generation activities that you may be engaged in. And then we move them to like a conversion. We can chat about conversion. Do you have anything to add there, Josh? Maybe some lead generation activities or strategies that you may be leveraging, or that you've seen?
Yeah, I think you.
Sorry to interrupt
Yeah.
you. Something that actually like speaks to the audience, like businesses in the trades, perhaps.
I think you mentioned a lot of good ones, and so I mean, networking is pretty key, and networking can sometimes be a bad word because we start to think of like maybe like MLM or something, right? But I think being part of some kind of network is pretty important, so that people know who you are, right? So I used to be part of a business group years ago, and the person who started it, his phrase was, "It's not about what you know or who you know, but who knows you." So you need to get yourself out there and just connect with other people that you would do business with, right? So that's pretty important. So were you going to say something there, Lyndon? Or?
I've got a coach that always reminds me it's who you are, what you do, and where to find you.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
What you're creating. Yeah.
And so that gets to another thing I was going to mention, is being intentional about your lead generating activities to make sure you kind of capture, and this term you probably hear as well, capture them as well as possible. So I used to have a business years ago doing promotional products, so kind of like branded swag type stuff. And golf tournaments were pretty key. Everyone would always want to have branded swag for golf tournaments. And so what I would usually say to them is like, rather than just handing this stuff out at a whole, right? Like put a QR code with a little thing in there that says like, hey, scan this, be entered into a draw to win something else, right? And so most people will scan it, and then they'll give you their, their name and their email address. And now you can continue that conversation. So because maybe what you're giving away or what you're putting out there on social media, whatever it might be, might allow for some brand awareness. But if you want them to know who you are, where you are, and how to do business with you, right? you need to let them know that, and that takes a little bit more communication, and that can move, we can get into conversion in a second here, but you want to warm up your leads so that they become more familiar with who you are. And so communication is pretty key, being able to capture that information and then not abusing that information, right? So if you're going to be sending emails out to leads, be respectful of people's email inboxes and just add value when you're going to be sending those emails.
Absolutely. I think you hammered it right there. Like, add value. You're not there to flood their inboxes. And, maybe something that wasn't mentioned here, but when you're capturing those leads or capturing people's information, every interaction or engagement that you have with someone via social media, web inquiry, networking, whatever it is that you're doing to have those conversations outside of the glass, outside of the shop. You want to capture those people's information and put that into your CRM, your customer relationship management system, so that you can feed them with more valuable information about your business, about the problems that you solve for them. And really just keep your business top of mind. Keep that awareness out there. Oh, these guys do this. Yeah. You're kind of setting their RAS, their reticular activating system, to think about your business, on the weekend or in the next meeting that they had. Right. So you're just keeping your business top of mind with them.
And when you have that, it essentially becomes the pool of potential people that will work with your business, right? And so you want to know, you want to, as much as possible, know who's in that pool, right? And the things that they care about. And so the more you can start to then segment that pool, right, the better you can communicate what it is that needs to be communicated to each of those people along that journey to warm them up to do business with you. And again, when I say warm them up to do business with you, again, this is not like a manipulative type endeavor we're trying to talk about here. It's letting people become familiar, like you said, with who you are.
Creating awareness and creating that trust and really creating clarity around what it is that you do. I think the types of businesses, some people, still wonder what it is that we do. Sometimes I wonder what we do. But some people ask me so what is it that you do? And you can see it doesn't quite land the first time because it's not a space or, it's not something that they're surrounded by or engaged in every single day. So we've got to really help identify what value it is or what problem we're solving for them. And we can do that through those engagements that we were talking about, those drip campaigns or those, the different types of marketing that you can introduce. All right, Josh, I'm going to move us across to conversion because we can speak for hours around lead.
Yeah, right.
And we'll get into that later on in our book or in our podcasts around what some strategies around
for sure
finding your unique selling proposition, your ICPs, things like that. But once you've got that lead coming in, the next part is conversions, right?
Yes.
You want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so conversions is essentially that, right? We're not converting people to a religion here. We're basically converting people into customers, right? And so you want to take them from lead status to customer status. And so it's that tipping point where they basically you make the sale, right? You get the contract signed, right? So that's your conversion moment. And so conversion rate, which is the driver that we're talking about 6 revenue drivers. Conversion rate is one of those. So of every, say, 10 leads that you interact with, what rate of those 10 or 100 or whatever it ends up being actually become paying customers? And that's what we're talking about with conversion rate.
And this, going back to what you were saying about the KPIs being key predictive indicators, or was that
it's a hijacking of the term. It is key performance indicators, but it's kind of a fun hijack to be well, let's think about some of these things as predictive indicators, right?
So I mean, when you're taking, I mean, you're saying you get those 10 leads coming in, and let's say you convert 2 leads, so you've got a 20% conversion rate. Now you can start predicting for every 10 leads that I've got coming into my business, I can convert 2 of them, and we've got 2 new clients. So leads multiplied by your conversions will give you the number of customers that you have.
Which helps you reverse engineer your goals for revenue driving activities, right? So if you're well, how many leads do I need, to grow my revenue? You look at your conversion rate, right? So if 5% of them become paying customers, you're like, okay, well, if I need, 100 of these, how many leads do I actually need to convert, right?
Yeah. And also, I mean, a thing to consider is you don't just want to turn the tap on with those leads and go crazy on bringing like a massive influx of leads into your business if you don't have the capacity to do it, right? If your pipeline's already full and now you need to book these these clients into the future, or you don't have the capacity to fulfill on the demand that then gets generated out of that,
Mm-hmm.
you start having more control over what your business like is doing in terms of
Yeah.
your marketing and sales and how they start speaking to one another.
And this actually then starts to come into play with thinking through who your ideal customer is then as well, because you want to, you probably heard the term like qualify, you want to have pre-qualified leads. So the people who come in, think of it as like a funnel. You probably heard of like marketing funnels, right? So if people come in through the funnel, you can blitz your information out there to the world and have a million leads come in, but a fraction of them are actually going to be your ideal customers or clients. And so you want to think about who it is that I want to have as a customer. And so, if you're a contractor and your thing is bathrooms and that's the big thing that you do, you don't want people coming to you asking about kitchens, right? And so you want to, because your conversion rate will then be a lot lower and you're going to be spinning your wheels doing a lot of activities.
You're going to be wasting time. Yeah.
Exactly. And so you want to think through, okay, what is it that I'm trying to do as a business? Who am I trying to add value to the most? And how do I qualify those potential leads? So using the bathroom kitchen differentiation there, it's like, so you market to people who are going to be more interested in, like, say, a bathroom rental than a kitchen one,
Yeah,
right? And so,
100%. So that's moving back into like generating the leads. What are some strategies or some tactics around actually converting those leads?
So the pre-qualification thing is huge, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to be spending so much time. And when you think of time, like, those are resources, right? So in project management, you have your triple constraint theory, where you've got like your scope, your budget, and your schedule, right? So these things are all tied together. So if you think of it in the same way with lead generating activities, if you're spending a lot of time working with leads who actually would not be good customers, like, you're pulling from other areas of
Yeah.
resources in your business. So you want to try to find a way to pre-qualify leads. So even if if you're a contractor and you've got a website and that you're bringing people to, and then there's a contact us form on your website, right?
Yeah.
Don't just have a phone number and name and email address, right? Maybe have some qualifying questions where it's like, hey, what is it that you're looking to do, right? So then you can get a sense of that. It can be a little bit tricky to have something on there like, what is your budget? Because a lot of people will start to think, oh, this person's trying to price me already, right? So you got to be a little bit careful
Or,
with wording on that.
or it already starts feeling salesy when you start
Yep,
asking those types of
totally.
questions. So it could be quite intrusive. But yeah, I think to the point here, it's really you want to pre-qualify the lead, and you got a higher chance to convert them,
Yeah,
or there's a higher possibility of converting them. So good quality leads lead to higher conversion rates. But
yeah,
when you're going through that conversion, so I look at lead generation as being a marketing pillar, and I look at conversion being sales, right?
yeah,
So it's that conversation that you're having to really just push the client over the line and engage with your business in whatever services, products that you're selling them.
for sure. And
Um,
so you want them to be comfortable with doing business with you at that point, right? So now they know about your business. So you want to get them to do business with you. And so what are some of the things that make people uncomfortable? It's the unknowns, right? And so product or service guarantees really help with something like that, right? If you can offer something like that, it just takes that risk component out of the transaction, right? If you can
mhm.
offer some level of guarantee of what they will get at the end of the day. If I walk into a shoe store and I see some shoes on the shelf, I know that's the exact shoe I'm about to buy. So the risk there is low. I'm going to buy my shoes. I get this thing. But if you work with, like, say, contractors or a service type business, it's like, okay, I'm going to pay you this money and I'm going to trust that somehow this is going to turn out to be what I expect it to be, right? And so it's trying to remove that element of risk in the perspective of the lead there.
100% agree with you. And I think, just to that point, I know so many businesses out there that I've worked with that guarantee their work, right? They actually have guarantees in place. I mean, we guarantee that, like, if this goes wrong, we'll fix it,
Yeah,
or if something happens, we'll get it right. And they have that. They're not communicating that in any place, and not on their website, not on their proposals, and that really does help with the conversion, because when someone's looking at three proposals and there's the written guarantees that are in place there, it's like, yeah, well, these guys actually have these guarantees. I'm probably going to go with these. They're a little bit more expensive, but I feel safer in making this decision with this particular company as opposed to the other one. The other one might be great and they might have the same guarantees, but it's not written there.
that's right.
That's a really great strategy, or approach to converting clients. Yeah.
And similarly, like social proof also helps too. So if you have testimonials or anything like
Yeah.
that, it really helps, because it's like, okay, this person does kitchen renos. Do they do a good job, right? So maybe they give me a guarantee, but will they even honor the guarantee? But if you can see that, oh, there's actually a number of reviews and people really like the quality of work and they seem like they work with integrity. So now my perspective of risk is even lower. And so I'm a lot more likely to enter into a business relationship.
So to that point I mean, testimonials are great because it tells people, hey, we've worked with these guys, we trust them, they do good work. Reviews are also fantastic because it could come through as a negative or a bad review, but we don't always look at it as a bad review as a bad thing. It's how you respond to those reviews,
Yes.
and address the issue that they have. Because when that bad review comes through, what it really means is that the customer hasn't had an opportunity or given you an opportunity to make it right. And now this is your opportunity to make it right with them. So if you get that bad
Yep.
review, it's an opportunity for you to really fix things with them. And in no way does it mean that they have to change their review, but it gives you the opportunity to make it right with them. And if they do fix that review or change that review or update it, it also then demonstrates that, hey, you've got humans working in your business.
That's
Things
right.
can go
Yeah.
wrong, right?
And they're responsive, right? That's pretty
You've,
key.
you've got a good response to, like, your management structures got a good response to that, and they if something happens, I know these guys are going to sort it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Right.
Another just really, really funny one. Well, not funny because it's actually a reality. Is make it make it easy to actually transact with your business, right? So if your business only accepts checks, for example, for payment, right? If I come to you and I'm like, Lyndon, I'm ready. Like, let's do this. I want to work with you. How do I pay you? And if you're like, yeah, if you can write me a check, right? I'd be like, oh, well, like I don't have my checkbook on me because nobody carries a checkbook anymore, right? So you want to find ways to lower the barriers to even do business with you. So if you have 30-page engagement letters that people need to read before they can sign a contract, right? I mean, somebody like me, I like to read every word and I like to know what I'm signing before I sign it. And so with the exception, I suppose, of all these end user agreements for software that are literally like 150 pages. But if there's a barrier in place to do business with you, it's going to impact your conversion rate, whether that's how you accept payments, whether that's things that have to be done before the dotted line is signed, right?
Absolutely. So I'm going to move us into and I agree with that. I mean, when I started with my business, I was one of those that had that 30-page agreement, and I got feedback. I listened to the customers, like, this is so long. You want me to read through all of this? Can we not just get the job done? Can we not just jump into it? And
Yeah.
there's a degree of trust that you foster that trust through the conversations and the
Yeah.
relationship that you build with them. And our agreements are short and sweet now.
Yeah.
Much easier,
Well,
much
I
easier
envy
to.
you, Lyndon, because as accountants, like we still have fairly long engagement letters. But usually, what I try to do to bridge that is I do video walkthroughs of proposals, and so I'm like, this section is this section is this. But yeah, for sure, I want to minimize those barriers, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done the we've touched on lead generation, conversion. So now you've got the customer. What's next up there? I've got retention here.
Yeah, so let's talk retention and referral because that all impacts your number of customers, right? You've got your leads, your conversion rate, and so the other two drivers that are going to impact your number of customers, which gets to that original equation, right? The original equation, number of customers times your average dollar per sale times number of transactions per customer. And so we're talking about number of customers here. So you got your leads, your conversion rate. So now you've got retention rate and referral rate, right? So retention rate is as it sounds, is retaining customers, right? Like keeping the relationship sticky. How do you do that? And just the importance of that. So if you can keep your customers, right? And maybe it depends on the nature of your business, right? I mean, if you're building, if you're doing like tilt ups or something, it happens to be for a certain type of client, like probably not going to be building 10 of those for a client in a couple of years, right? Maybe you will, but the nature of what you do for business may impact your retention rate. But if you have the type of business that allows you to come back and have additional transactions with customers, you want to try to maximize your retention rate because those are customers that you don't have to go and find, right? They're going to come back to you.
Yeah.
And so when I say go and find customers, I mean, you have this whole concept, and we'll probably talk about this in another episode, is like client acquisition costs, right? Like how much does it cost to bring in a new customer? So as soon as you've retained a customer, you no longer have that dynamic to consider, right? And so retention is pretty key.
Yeah, retention's so important because you work so hard to get a customer, and I mean the numbers that I'm going to throw out here are very much industry specific or industry. It'll change in for different types of businesses, but the average is it costs 6 to 7 times more to bring a new customer into your business than to re-engage with an existing or previous customer that you've dealt with.
Interesting.
Now, there's things to consider there because you've done work with a customer and you've completed their job or their project or you've serviced them. Like you still want to retain them because now you've already built that trust, right? I mean, think about it when you go to a shop or a barber or you end up going back to the same person over and over and over again because you trust them. You know what you're going to get. There's some familiarity there. It's going to you know what service to expect and what the outcome is going to be. So there's that degree of trust that's already been developed there. So when you invite your previous customers back into your business, or you're just servicing your existing clients and making sure that like keeping them happy, you get to retain them. I think I'm talking about something that we might be digging into in a sec here as well.
Yeah, so I mean, as far as like what we would be doing to look at how to maximize retention, right? So looking at retention rate as a driver again, right? So we're talking number of customers, average dollar per sale, number of transactions per customer. Number of customers is driven by leads, conversion rate, retention rate, and referral rate. So your retention rate is going to increase or decrease your number of customers, right? And so what are some things then that you can do to drive your retention rate would be the question, right? So one of these things is like delivery. Like you want to deliver well on the product or service that you're offering. So if you do that, people will come back. It gets to that trust thing, right? If they trust you to do what it is that they're paying you to do or sell or provide, then they will come back. Right.
And just a comment on that. Yeah. So deliver what is expected. So over deliver and under promise. But there needs to be a degree of consistency in what you're doing. You can't show up this week over here and then next week you're down here and then the next week you're up here again. Like there needs to be a certain degree of consistency in what how you're delivering. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to a job site and your team are like super friendly and welcoming, and then the next day they're coming and like it's not the same experience. It's not consistent, right? And and I think that goes to your point. Like you want to deliver, but deliver consistently.
Yeah.
You go to McDonald's anywhere in the world, you're going to get a Big Mac, and you kind of have a good idea of what it's going to taste like, right?
Yeah. And that's an interesting example to give, Lyndon, is because it's notable when it's then different, right? It's so consistent that if ever there's a deviation from that consistency, you'll walk away and be like, that Starbucks drink did not taste like the last 50 times I bought it, right? Because there's such high consistency with a lot of these types of systems. You talked about expectations there. I think I heard someone mention it this way. You need to deal with unexpressed, unmet expectations. So to just make sure that customers are happy, right? And so and this is something, when I heard, I'm like, oh, I really need to put some systems in place to do this well, is because a lot of people have expectations of what you're going to provide to them, but they haven't necessarily expressed what those expectations are. They're their expectations, right? You may have your own expectations of what you're going to be providing. And so if those unexpressed expectations are not met, that can become a problem, right? And
Absolutely.
so
Yeah.
you want to try to find a way to at least connect with your customers and be like, hey, how's this coming along? How are you finding this? In the contracting space, you kind of see this all the time when, once you got the walls framed up and the customer comes walking in, they're like, oh, I didn't know that the closet would be over here, right? So there's like expectations that happen, which, whether you want to call it a change order or whatever it ends up being after that is a different story. But there's an expectation that the customer had, and then there was a deviation from that. Whether or not it's expressed is a different story, but you want to try to minimize those situations from happening.
Oh, absolutely.
Unless you're looking to blow them away with expectations. So if you meet and exceed expectations, then that's a bit of a different story.
Yeah. Also, often I think like having conversations with business owners, you're like, what's important to them, and it's like quality. We deliver a high quality, and but how consistently do you do that, right? And
Yeah.
if it's not consistent, and you've done it to a really high quality, that you've kind of set the expectation to be again at that level, and then you got to continue showing up and delivering at that level. So just make sure that if that's where you are,
You can
that's where
stay
you
there.
always are. And
Yeah.
you mentioned something about unexpressed expectations. What can you like? I'm trying to think. What can you do to ensure that you're getting that feedback from the client without being too intrusive, or like
Mm-hmm.
how are we doing here?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, check-ins are key. I mean, having conversations and regular communication with your customers is pretty key.
mhm.
If you're doing a big construction project, that's going to happen inevitably because you're going to be on the same site multiple times going through things. Um, even you can even sort of establish that at the front end. So, in a different type of business, if you're providing a type of service and maybe somebody's coming to you who had left a previous service provider,
Mhm.
a good question to ask is, well, why are you leaving your service provider, right? Because that will highlight some of the things that maybe they had some expectations that weren't being met. And so that can, kind of help you peel back the cover a little bit and be like, oh, interesting. Okay. They think this is important. That's good to know. Right.
So it's like a bit of positioning at the earlier stages of that relationship, like
Mm-hmm.
positioning those expectations and understanding what those expectations are, and then just ensuring that you're delivering on that. There
Yeah.
needs to be a check-in. I absolutely agree with you, and it's just a temperature check to say, where you can create the space for them to say, hey guys, like we're not happy, or I got a fingernail in my coffee. How did that happen?
Yeah, right.
Like,
That'd be a hard one to recover
for
from, huh?
example, it's so gross. But like if people are not expressing that, like they might just not go back to that coffee shop again because like, oh, it was gross. But
Yeah.
you've never been given that unexpressed expectation, or the issue
Yeah.
has not been brought to your attention, so you never have that opportunity to make it right with them, and
Yeah.
you lose that client. So there needs to be that space where you can create feedback, honest. I always say, when you're giving feedback, be honest, but be kind, and but be honest, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's no need to be awful and rude about it. It's just deliver it in a way that it's honest and kind. Now,
For
I
sure.
think just you need to create that in your business where your clients can give you that feedback, and
Yeah.
the relationship, you can leverage the relationship to make it right.
And you have to wonder as well, if you have the opportunity to make something right, chances are, if you can, and if you do
Mm.
it and you do it well, that the strength of that relationship is probably increased even more perhaps than maybe clients who you haven't had to have that experience with, right? If the client's not happy and you identify that and you rectify it, they're probably a happier client than maybe somebody who you've never heard of or heard from in terms of how satisfied they are.
Yeah. And
So
that kind of leans into the next part that we've got here, which is referrals. So once you've got a happy client and you've met their expectations, they can start referring people to you, and then that is a pretty warm lead that's coming into your business, and the chances of converting that lead into a client is pretty high because if it's good enough for Bob, it's going to be good enough for me. And
exactly.
Bob's
Yeah.
only raving about these guys, so like we got to do business with them. Like I've got to
Yeah.
find a new whatever service provider, and this is the only consideration because Bob's using them.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. That's super key. And this gets back to the trust thing that we talked about earlier, right? So you don't need to try to bridge that trust gap that exists between I don't know who you are and let's do business because Bob's already done business with you. And
Hmm.
so they get to walk over the same bridge to get to you, right? That's kind of what's going on with the referrals. And now the onus is then going to be on you and your business to deliver on the expectations there, right? Because now it's not just potentially making the new customer unhappy, but if you don't deliver well to that customer, now you're making Bob unhappy as well, right? And so you need to honor the referral and recognize that that referral was made based on a pre-existing relationship that's now bringing you into it, and you don't want to uh, dishonor that in any way.
Yeah, 100% agree there. And just another point on referrals. I think this is a missed opportunity for so many businesses. You've got a client base. You've been working with them for a while. You've already built the trust with them. You've got that good relationship with them. And you never ask them to refer your business. Hey, do you know someone that could use our services? Or do you know someone that could benefit from what we do? And oh yeah, I know many people. Why aren't they your clients yet? Like
Right. Yeah.
that's where you've got to start looking. And I mean, any service-based businesses that are built in relationships, and if you can bridge that trust gap by getting a warm referral, it really makes a big difference.
For sure. Yeah. And that ask, before you go and do an ask like that, it actually helps you kind of do a little bit of a personal gut check for your business to be like, am I positioned to ask this in the first place? Right? Because if you feel uncomfortable asking, it may be because maybe your delivery is not to the level that you think it should be to qualify you to ask for a referral to begin with, right? And so it kind of helps you do a bit of a where do I sit? Would people laugh at this request? Would they be like, hey, for sure, right? And then it comes down to how to ask too. And this is probably the most uncomfortable part, right? Is like nobody wants to feel like they're being salesy. Nobody wants to feel like, and no disrespect to like the insurance industry, but like, the classic life insurance salesperson, right? Like, do you have any friends that I can also sell to, right? So,
Yeah.
like, you don't want to come across as sort of like that feel either. And that's totally understandable. And so, is how do you have that conversation? And I think the way you put it earlier, Lyndon, is good. It's like, like who do you know who maybe could also benefit from what it is that we're doing,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yeah, I think that asking for the referral is also about positioning them. So like there are certain moments of truth in your business where you get an opportunity to really blow your client out of the water, and that's where they're getting exceptional results through what you're doing, or once you've completed a job and they're absolutely satisfied. I know some clients of mine, in fact, that have like a system where we work them through, and at the end of the job, we ask them for like just this customer satisfaction
yeah.
survey, and then if they've ranked us at like 5 stars, or them rather at 5 stars for each of these questions, then it's like, would you provide us with a Google review? And
Yeah.
then you're kind of channeling them there. Were they in the right mind space and they like they satisfied with the work? There's a review.
Yeah.
And the same thing, like, do you know anybody that could benefit from these services? Like, is there anybody that you could refer to our business? We're looking at growing, or whatever that looks like. And you can warm them up for that conversation there. So it's just making sure that they positioned, and like you said, that gut check. If you don't feel like I've earned this referral or I'm ready there, it could be like, hey, let's do a temperature check with the
Yeah.
client, see where we're at, and
Yeah.
just check what understand that we're giving them the value that they're expecting. What did you how did you pronounce how did you word it earlier? That
The unexpressed,
unexpressed.
unmet expectations.
Yeah, so having that conversation with them and just getting real with them and saying,
Yeah.
hey, are we hitting the mark for you? And sometimes you'll surprise yourself because they're focused on their business. They're not focused on praising you and giving you
Of
everything
course.
that you're looking for.
Yeah,
They're focused on
exactly.
their business, so you might not get that unless you're actually asking for it. So
Exactly.
yeah.
So like what you had mentioned there too with the survey at the end, it's a great time to sort of ask that question, is because they've just done some type of engagement with you, right? And so so at that point, that is the best time to sort of ask, hey, do you know anybody else, right?
Yeah.
Because if you ask 6 months later, like they've, depending on the nature of your business, they've probably forgotten who you are, right? Because that transaction was so long ago. Unless your business is such that you've got an ongoing relationship, that you stay in regular contact. So,
Yeah. All right.
um,
Average dollar sale. What does that look like?
yeah. So, sorry, I'm just looking at my notes from referral rate, just seeing if there's anything we wanted to mention. But yeah, I think we kind of covered everything there. So, average dollars per sale. That's actually looking at how you're pricing your products or services,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so, when we do a future episode just about like break even and stuff, we'll talk about pricing and the importance of how you price it. But that's really what we're looking at is how do you increase potentially the amount of dollars that the average customer spends when they do a transaction with you. Now, I just want to clarify, we're not talking about gouging people and just trying to get it, like squeeze as much as you can out of customers. You want to provide the value that justifies the price that they are paying, right? But there's ways that you can increase your average dollars per sale without being sleazy and just kind of doing business in a gross way, right? So one of those things is upselling, and upselling is often seen as like a bad word, and so I'm just going to kind of explain how this can be done in a way that's not gross. I'm not sure when this started, but when you go to the drive-thru like Tim Hortons or Starbucks or something like that, and you order, if we're like, okay, I want to have like a medium steep tea or whatever, like, okay, anything else? Yeah, I'll get a medium coffee, like double. Okay, anything else? Yeah, I'll get a bagel. Okay, anything else? And that's what they do. They just keep asking anything else until you say no. And then that's it. They're not saying, oh, can I get you to buy a bagel or can I get you to buy a donut? They're just saying, anything else? Because they're getting you to think through what it is that you need or want, right? Now, as a professional in whatever business you might have, you want to think through how it is that you can educate your client to be able to answer that question, anything else, right? And a lot of people don't necessarily know that. So if you're offering like, contracting services or any kind of professional service that you offer, you are the professional. And so the customer will often trust you to explain what it is that they may need. And then you can explain the value in what that might be, and then leave it up to them whether or not they want to say add that on to whatever it is that you're providing to them. But explain to them, if using the drive-through example again, if people didn't know what a coffee was, then they wouldn't think to say, yeah, I'd like a medium coffee, right? If people didn't know what a bagel was, and didn't know that your store sold a bagel, they wouldn't think to say, I'd like a bagel, right? So you need to let them know that, hey, we offer these services, these products. This is how it benefits you. Again, using the restaurant example, here's a beautiful picture of this great bagel that you can get from us, right? So they'd be like, oh, okay, that's an option. And then they
So
can,
what I'm hearing there, like for a service-based business, like a contractor going in and the client's requested a proposal for something, it could be, have you considered, and then
For sure. It's a great way of wording it.
I know
Yeah.
you're looking at putting in some new taps here, but have you considered that it's maybe going to look a bit odd having just this style tap over here, and we can do the one in the bath
Yeah.
the faucet in the bath as well. Yeah, so have you considered that? So that could be a good.
I like that.
What did you say? To me, is it's anything else, or have you considered?
That's right. Yeah.
And everything like this average dollar sale, this layer that we're looking at currently, the way that I typically explain this to people is when you're going into the grocery store and you've got everything that you need and you're kind of going through to go pay at the counter. There's all these convenience items, usually sweets or like
Yeah.
candy, snacks, and things like that. And it's like, oh, I need that, and chuck it in the basket. So it's what are you doing in your business to make the value of that basket
Yeah.
increase? So
Or Amazon, right? Customers who purchased this also bought this, right? It's those recommendations. So, and again, it's not being salesy. It's you're just educating the customer that, hey, here's some other additional options. If you're like, hey, you should get this, you should do this, that's getting a little bit gross, right?
they'll tell you when it's enough, or
Yeah.
where their budget lies. And I think it's not your job to push the limits there, but it's your job to ensure that they're getting value out of everything.
And informing them what you can do.
Being a contractor on site, when you're on site and doing a job, I mean, to add additional scope to that job is probably cheaper than having to remobilize a team and come back to the site.
Yeah.
So, like, have you considered that we can do this while we're here? We can touch that up or whatever it looks like. And we can. It might cost you more, but it's going to cost you less in the long run.
Yeah.
The consideration
100%.
on that.
Another just little tip on the average dollar per sale is just the importance of tracking and knowing what that amount is. Like it's a very important starting point when it comes to that particular driver, your average dollars per sale. If you don't know what that number is, generally speaking, now, of course, the nature of the business is going to be, may impact if that's going to be more of an average or a specific number, right? You can segment it maybe into, if you do like general contracting, you can have like average dollar per sale for bathrooms is this, for kitchens is this, for the average like bedroom might be this, right? Or maybe it's per square, like a square footage type benchmark. But having those benchmarks is super key because first of all, it lets you know if it's changing, right? Is it changing? Is it increasing or decreasing?
Yeah.
And maybe once you actually like figure out what it is, you may think this is way too low, right? I'm underpricing. And that's a good realization, right? Because then you can actually put the changes in place to charge what it is that you should be charging. And then you can track it. And sorry, I just hit my mic there. You can see if that's changing based on the different activities that you're doing to drive your average dollar per sale.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it goes for all the other metrics that we were looking at earlier, or the points that we were looking at earlier, those the six revenue drivers. I mean, you want to be capturing the data for all of those areas.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to move us into the next one. The last one we've got here, Josh, the average number of transactions.
Yeah. So this is the number of times somebody purchases from you, right? And so sometimes, this might hit you in your own personal life too. When, like for example, with my Starbucks card and I look at how many times I've actually reloaded it and I'm like, wow, that's a large number of transactions that I've done. And so it's basically the number of times that you transact with a particular vendor or the number of times a customer will transact with you. And so again, the nature of your business may impact that directly. And so you may not have more than one transaction with a customer, but you might. And so this is looking, because again, we're getting back to the original equation, right? Your number of customers times your average dollar per sale times your number of transactions per customer. So if you can, if you had 10 customers and it was $10 per sale, you're talking about $100. Mm-hmm. But if now you had them each do 2 transactions on average per year rather than 1, you've just doubled your revenue simply by increasing the number of transactions. So, trying to find ways to have people come back is pretty key there.
So inviting them back into your business or to creating an offer I mean, it could be like something that's seasonal. So, hey, we can help you do a spring clean on your, on your garden or in your home or, you
Yeah.
know, um,
Yeah, and I think that's a good clarifying point there, Lyndon, is that because we talked about retention rate, which is retaining customers so that they will buy from you again. But what we're talking about here is number of transactions in that, you can provide, say, complementary services and things that are, similar to what you've done before, but will get them coming back to do
yeah,
more transactions. So a lot of this, there will be a lot of similarities with retention rate in terms of impacting this driver, right? So the strength of the relationship that you have with your customers, you know, delivering consistently, like we talked about, those things are all going to drive the number of transactions. But then
yeah,
also, again, making sure your customers know what it is that you can do, because maybe you do interior renos, right? And
mhm,
so, you did their kitchen, you did their bathroom. It's like, oh, we also do gutters, right? But maybe they didn't know they did gutters. And so maybe they hired a different gutter contractor simply because they didn't know that that's what you offer as
yeah.
well.
Well, I mean, the thought that I had in mind, I mean, it's, I mean, in this little town that we're in, we've got a handful of grocery stores, and how many transactions have I, how many times have I visited Walmart or what are the other ones that are here? Save on Foods or Safeway or
Yeah.
No Frills. So I mean, putting in mechanisms in place to make sure people are coming back into your store or into your business to kind of re-engage with you. So I
Yeah.
can tell you, like one of the stores would be more inviting, more, their services are more professional. There's a whole lot of things that you consider around there. Now I get that this actually speaks to the retention side of things that we were discussing earlier, but it kind of goes hand in hand. But this is something that you're measuring. So it's
Yeah.
like, how many times did you transact with that business or that client in the past month or past year? Like, it depends on your business and how frequently people can or like logically do a transaction with you, right?
Yeah. And so maybe the big difference between retention rate and average number of transactions, retention is going to be, will the person come back, right? Like, or will you lose them and have to bring in a new customer to replace that one? Like, that's your retention.
Yeah.
Number of transactions is that, like, it's a retained customer who's now doing multiple transactions with you. And how
Okay.
do you increase those number of transactions?
So how do you then measure the retention rate? What is it that you're looking at there?
Yeah, so on retention rate, you're kind of, another term for it's attrition, right? So
Hmm.
you kind of look at your customer list, and again, depending on the nature of your business, right? But if you would anticipate, so in accounting, for example, we typically will do recurring type of engagements each year with clients. So if
Okay.
somebody does not come back, that's a lost customer. There's a lot of different reasons why people don't come back, right? And so understanding what that rate is and what's impacting that rate. So that's kind of the whole retention side of it. But then the number of transactions is going to be, how many, think of even like tires, for example, right? Like, I buy a new set of tires. Now I'm probably going to, being that we live in the like northern part of Canada, I'm going to be going to the tire place to get my tires flipped, like for winter and summer. So they now have multiple number of transactions per year with me rather than just selling me a set of tires.
Yeah.
I'm now doing a service, or getting service from them multiple times during the year because they've retained me, but it's also an increased number of transactions. If they lose me as a customer, now they have to go find another customer to maintain their number of customers. But the number of transactions in a given period is going to be impacted by the different things that you can offer to your customers. And so complementary type services. When I say complementary, I mean not free, but like services that complement what it is that you've already done for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just making your clients really aware of everything that you offer. I
Yes,
mean, it's really,
100%.
I know your business does fractional CFO work, fractional controller work. I mean, you guys do business valuations, business valuation estimates. There's a whole suite, and just making sure that everybody, like your client, understands like the spectrum, so that when they're ready to make a decision on that, you're going to be the first consideration.
Yeah, and then they would know. So you don't end up having that conversation with a customer who was like, oh, well, we do that. We could have done that for you, right? They're like, well, I didn't know, right? And so this comes back to just informing your customers and making sure they're aware of all the things that you can do to provide value for them.
100%. All right, Josh, I think that's what we've got time for today.
Yeah.
We plan for these to be shorter, but this was a good conversation. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, the audience that are listening now. And yeah, we'll be back with some more. The next episode that we're going to be working on or having is going to be on your profit accounts, or sorry, that's your financial pillars. So we're going to be looking at making sure that you understand financial statements, your balance sheets, your profit and loss, taking a look at your cash flow forecast, making sure you get like a proper budget in place. And then the other part of it is understanding what your break even is. And we can get really deep into these topics as you probably learned today. But the goal is we're going to be keeping these sessions these episodes to a half an hour in future, and really just add like bite-sized chunks of really what we're discussing, the topic that we're discussing. So thank you very much for listening today, Josh. Thanks for your insights, and
You bet.
I'm looking forward to the next episode of the Business Growth Factor, where we have conversations about building better businesses.
Excellent. Well, thank you everybody for listening, and thanks Lyndon as well. It's a good conversation. I really enjoyed this.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Josh.